Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Court-Martail Podcast. Introducing your host for this evening first. He is the host with the most from the West Coast, the Bay Area Brawler, Skylar Greenberg. And his partner, he has colonized, energized, and revolutionized the podcasting wrestling world today. Your Colonial champion, Sean McMahon. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a historic episode of the Court-Martail Podcast, where we discuss the most seismic shift that has hit professional wrestling in the last 50 years. I am your Colonial champion, Sean McCarty, and if you think that I'm exaggerating, folks, oh, just wait. We have got a bundle of things to talk about, and it is a big bundle, a fat sack that Santa Claus is using to give presents to the children. And I am not the only one to talk about it, because alongside me is the man who's going to be facilitating this information. The man who is known to facilitate everywhere around him and to facilitate anywhere he needs to, no matter how many people are involved to clean it up. It is the man of the hour, the man with the power, too sweet to be sour. He is the Bay Area Brawler himself, Skylar Greenberg. How you doing, buddy?
You know, I'm actually not doing that well because I'm suffering from a little bit of something called whiplash.
Yeah, well, definitely. Yeah, it definitely feels like we've just gotten our shit rocked and slammed with piece after piece after piece of
I know, so much so that we were going to do National Wrestling League and Atlantic Coast Pro Wrestling, and then when we found out the first really big thing in news, like, okay, we got to talk about it in addition to our show's bookings. And then the other big news of the week hit, and then 3 or 4 more things came out, and it was just like, no, we have to cancel it.
Well, postpone. We're not canceling. We don't cancel at the Court-Martail Podcast, but we will postpone it.
Sorry, my bad.
Until next week. There's enough canceling going on as it is. Next week is when you are going to be receiving ACPW versus NWL, which unfortunately means that we are going to be bumping Money in the Bank 2013, our review and watch through of it, of part of our go back in time and watch a pay-per-view of old. We're going to be pushing that. Now, Skylar, I'm going to let this be your choice because it is your selection. Do you want to do that to begin July, or do you want to do that at the end of July where we normally would place it?
Considering that the Money in the Bank that's happening this year is at the beginning of July, we can push it to then.
All right, so 2 weeks from now, you will get Money in the Bank 2013's review. Next week, ACPW and NWL, but right now, we have to talk about Machoke using Seismic Toss and getting that victory over Alakazam, because Alakazam over there has got a fat stack of news. Roll it. Coming straight to you from the Golden Gate Garage, this is the Wrestle News with Skylar Green.
On tight mismatch in the history of tight mismatches.
That's right. Hey, fighting people can sometimes work, but usually not against psychic types. But still. And also, Seismic Toss has never been used ever to feint any Pokemon ever. Yeah, I said it.
I know, it's one of the most useless moves in Pokemon.
Even though it has one of the coolest animations in red, blue, and yellow. Like, where he just, he highlights him and then just turns him into a big old ball and just shoots him up and hucks him back down. I loved that.
Plus, when they did it in the anime, it literally was Charizard flying around the world. It's so disappointing.
What a time.
Damn it, Nintendo.
I know.
Damn it, Nintendo.
Well, thankfully, Nintendo is not the ones to blame today. But there are other very large figures that may get some blame. Where shall we start?
Well, we're going to save the big one for the end of the news of the week because there's a lot to go down. We're going to go with some of the smaller stuff that has happened and then work our way up.
All right, let's do this.
And unfortunately, we have to start with this one. We just recently found out that referee Dave Hebner, twin referee brother of Earl Hebner, has died.
And this is wild because, as many of you know, I am a loyal member of the Cult of Cornette, as evidenced by ACPW and NWL. Catch it next week. And he was just like last week talking about Dave Hebner and talked about Dave with Earl and how they did not only the switch, but there was a time when Dave was working for Vince and Earl was working for Crockett. And when they did the switch is when Earl actually was hired to WWE. That was like his debut, and then all of a sudden they just both started refereeing matches.
And that wasn't confusing.
Not at all, but also the people, funnily enough, didn't really notice because they kept Earl off TV, I think, for a few months, and then Earl started being slowly integrated into the regular circuit. But it's amazing how Earl kind of took off as this personality and Dave didn't. And
well, part of it is that Dave has had knee replacement surgery, so he started to wind down his time in the business. He actually became a road agent and was a road agent for a long time, especially during the Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression Era.
Yep. And while Earl all this time has been refereeing, and Earl was able to keep his kind of tightly figure, while Dave, and this is no knock on Dave at all, happens to all of us, Dave did not. And it's sad. It's just sad to hear because I like Dave as a referee. You know, in a day and age where a good, solid referee is hard to come by, I respect Dave for his contributions to the business.
And not only that, but the same family produced two very good referees.
Yeah. And, referees don't get as much credit as they deserve, as definitely the ones of the past. But Earl and Dave were both very, very good. You know, Earl, I think, got more of the personality where Dave kept a little bit more of the straight man, kind of calling it down the line the way that, you would. Not that Earl didn't, but Earl definitely got a little more pushback, against wrestlers and things like that. And obviously the screw job and all that jazz.
But I mean, part of that is that he arguably had a better mind for the business, and that's why he became a road agent.
Well, it's definitely possible. It's one of those interesting things. But they both had a gift for timing. You never caught Earl or Dave in a spot where they were out of position unless it was intended to be so. They were quality. They were quality referees, and Earl does a couple things here and there, but for the most part, he's done. And obviously, Dave retired a while back from the road. But it's sorry to hear, and obviously, our condolences are with Earl and with the entire Hebner family in this time.
I had to go back and rewatch the famous segment with the two Dave Hebners screwing Hogan out of the world title for Andre the Giant and Ted DiBiase, and I busted the gut.
It is funny.
Bobby Ventura saying, "Oh, it was plastic surgery."
Yeah, somebody had plastic surgery to look. Could you imagine being that dedicated to screwing somebody over that Ted DiBiase would hire someone to get plastic surgery to look like, of all people, Dave Hebner? It's but
he's $1 million man, and he can do whatever he wants.
And you know what? We've been getting ourselves a lot of Ted DiBiase of late, and God, what a talent he was.
I mean, there's a reason why Ted DiBiase is one of the best of the business and recognized as such.
Yeah, if only the people of Mississippi had caught on to that whole $1 million thing beforehand. But
and we're gonna steer clear of that.
Yeah, but let's not talk about that.
Too many.
We'll leave that alone for the time being. Research it, folks. Google it.
Right. Now we're going to move on to the next piece of news that's been going out, involving a pen known as Randall Keefe, Randy Orton.
All right. What do we got for RKO?
So, I'm sure you haven't noticed because you haven't been watching WWE, but Randall Keefe has actually been out of action for a while with issues with his back.
Yeah, it's funny because, I have this very peripheral view at this point, so I kind of just get the briefings from mostly Corny, actually. But, I'll sometimes see some results or things like that, or you'll bring up some things during the week that are of potential interest. But I know that Orton was out and was injured, but I heard that this injury might be worse than we know.
Yep. So here's what was originally supposed to happen. They were going to have Riddle feud with Roman Reigns, which is happening on SmackDown.
Joy.
And the thing about it is that actually, if you watch Riddle, he's been more serious because he's like, I'm fighting for not just myself, but for Randy, my best friend, who was taken out by you, Roman Reigns. They're doing that kind of storyline.
Sure.
It's given the chance to Riddle to be more serious and not be as much of a toddler. But the thing about it is that the plan was that Riddle was going to lose the match to Roman Reigns that he did on the June 17th SmackDown. Randy would come back and he would feud with Roman, and they would go to SummerSlam as the main event.
Sure.
Now there's concern with Randy Orton that his back injury is not healing as fast as he was supposed to, and that he will have to get surgery, and that not only may he be out of 2022 for the rest of the year, it may be career threatening.
They're falling like flies, Skylar. They're dropping left and right. My God, every name. It's so fascinating. It's almost like the wrestling industry as a sentient being was like, I need to force these companies to make some goddamn stars. And so they made sure that every single conceivable good wrestler that we've had on any of these programs is injured with something so severe that they're going to be out for a long period of time. Or in MJF's case, just saying, fuck you, Tony Khan, I'm not being a part of this.
Well, here's the thing, is that you say this, but WWE brought back Brock Lesnar to wrestle against Roman Reigns. They had Brock Lesnar appear after the Riddle-Roman title match, and now it's Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns at SummerSlam in a last man standing match.
Yeah, I don't care. And
I like that they have Brock Lesnar as the in case of emergency break glass.
Yeah. Or just knock on the glass and Brock will break it himself. And so, I mean, what else? Are you surprised that they were going to do this? What's the other option? Edge again?
Bobby
Lashley, I mean, yeah, but can you really put Lashley against Roman Reigns right after this abomination with Omos? Yeah, exactly. It just, I feel like Lashley needs a feud to bolster himself up. I really would prefer it not be Austin Theory, but that seems to be what they're going with that weird-ass pose down they did on Raw this past Monday, not this week, but the week prior. And I don't know. It's just, I want Lashley to be in the main event. I'd love Lashley to beat Roman for the belt. However, is he at that level right now? And it's not a knock on Bobby at all. You and I both love Bobby.
But he's been cooled down by the things that have happened recently. Like, when he won the match at Royal Rumble against Brock, that was his hottest, and he's been quieted down partially due to injury, but partially because of bad booking.
Yeah, and,
Why would you separate MVP from Bobby Lashley?
Because they knew that Omos was not working, and they are throwing everything and the kitchen sink at the wall to try to get that dude over, and it is not working.
If you can't get a dude over, then maybe there's nothing to get over.
Yeah, maybe let him go down to NXT 2.0 and feud with insert NXT name here.
Better yet, fire him.
Oh, he's in the land of the giants, Sky. They don't fire big guys.
They got rid of Braun Strowman at some point.
Yeah, because they milked him for all they were worth, ruined him with booking, but think about how long that took.
Well,
how long has Omos been around? 2 years? He's got another 6 before they're finally like, okay, we're done.
Braun Strowman was around for 5 years. Shh.
Yeah, so
Shit.
So 3 more years.
Shit, I liked him for 2 of them.
He had a good 8-month stretch that I really was into Braun Strowman. And then he had the kid wrestle the Bar. And that was the end of Braun Strowman for me.
And if it wasn't that, it was going to be the stupid swamp fight with The Fiend.
Oh, yeah, I've totally forgot about that.
Which, by the way, is another reason why WWE has not brought back Bray Wyatt, is because apparently it's been seen that Bray Wyatt is the killer of baby faces, and that anyone he wrestles comes out significantly cooler than when they were going in, because of feuds with Seth Rollins, with Roman Reigns, with Chris Jericho, with basically anybody that Bray Wyatt has feuded with.
And that's Bray's fault?
Well, part of it is that Bray Wyatt got an ego and thought he was the next Undertaker, that he was going to be a big star, and that he should be treated with as much respect as the Undertaker.
Well, and also on top of that, when Bray Wyatt started really getting into the ridiculous stuff, you have to wonder how much of that was him and how much of that was quote-unquote creative.
Considering the reports that Bray Wyatt was given pretty much the freedom to do whatever he wanted.
I don't know. I'm not sure, but at this point, the point is that Roman Reigns doesn't really have any other options right now than Brock Lesnar. And you can't even put Drew in that equation. What was the last thing Drew did that was important? He kicked out of the End of Days. Joy.
I mean, he's going to be in Money in the Bank.
Do you think that the crowd will pop if he wins it?
No.
There you go. And you think that they're supposed to put Drew against Roman Reigns? Unfortunately, I think they missed the boat with that match. I think that match went perfectly in NWL, and they are not going to do it. They're just not going to do it. Because the time has come and gone for Drew McIntyre on the main roster unless they change something significantly with him.
Turn him heel.
That might work. That always might have worked. Or, don't Pillmanize his neck and then have him come back a month later.
Turn him heel.
You didn't hear it from us, but you may have heard it from us, WWE. You can have that one. I know you're going through a lot right now, so that's our gift to you, courtesy of the Court-Martail podcast.
Yeah. Anyways, we're gonna move on to the next person, the boss, Sasha Banks.
Well, if that's not the boss, we're gonna talk about the boss, but we'll talk about Sasha Banks.
Well, she is a boss.
Well, she's
so much of a boss that she called her own shot
and decided to walk out. Now, I've heard rumors, but I don't know if any of this is confirmed. Unless you have information I don't.
Nothing is confirmed, but at this point, basically WWE sees Sasha Banks as being gone, and that she's never coming back.
Don't blame her. Honestly, when you get to a point when you're like, I've had all I can stand and I can't stand no more, I don't blame Sasha for doing what she did. More people need to have balls like that. I'll give credit to Sasha. She had balls to do what she did. Everyone's calling it a hissy fit, but at what point they're not going to learn otherwise?
Again, it's what you've been calling for. More people should be walking out because of creative decisions that they don't like with this company. Because clearly, they're not going to do anything with tag team wrestling.
Not in women's tag team wrestling.
Any tag team wrestling.
I would say they barely like men's tag team wrestling. And you think they're going to push the women's tag? I don't think so. Not a chance.
Not a chance in the world. And Sasha Banks knew it. And she didn't want to get any of the stink on her, because the whole thing, remember, is that she was supposed to lose to... Oh, yeah, she was supposed to lose to Ronda Rousey.
Well, she was supposed to lose to Ronda Rousey, but she was supposed to pin Naomi to do it.
Right, so you pin your tag team partner, and then you go on to lose to Ronda Rousey, who has been having stinker matches and stinker feuds.
Ronda Rousey has finally shown everybody she doesn't give a shit. Which I knew I knew the whole time, but now everybody's starting to catch on to Ronda Rousey not caring and not respecting wrestling. And I think that especially with the smarky audience that's around, they're starting to turn on her for that reason.
It's not the snarky audience that's really the problem. It's the casuals. The casuals are not reacting to her now.
Because they sense it.
Major issue.
They sense it. She's got no life. There's no passion in her eyes when she goes out there.
It's literally the whole phrase of, hey, I'm going to walk out, I'm going to collect a check, and I'm going to say what I have to say or do what I have to do.
Yeah. At least the first go around, she was trying because she wanted to prove she could. But now that everyone thinks she can, she's not trying, and now everybody realizes that she can't.
Professional wrestling, ladies and gentlemen. You can be paid so much to do so little.
Yep. And if you're good at doing so little in the right way, you can get away with it. But if you're just doing so little because you don't give a fuck, that's something else entirely.
Yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen with Sasha Banks. If I had to guess, and this is just from my personal thing, she's the cousin of Snoop Dogg. She already has been in the Star Wars universe in TV film. So I think she's probably going to go Hollywood.
I think she could. I have another proposal.
Do not say AEW.
Snoop Dogg has already wrestled in AEW. Do we get a Jade Cargill and Shaq against Snoop Dogg and Sasha Banks?
No.
Tell you what, Tony. I pretty much hate everything you are and what you stand for right now. But if you book that match, I will watch it. Because that's got car wreck written all over it, and I cannot miss that kind of action. That's the way you bring me back.
Are you a masochist, Sean?
I'm feeling a little gluttonous for punishment. So that's, well, I mean, if you're gonna go full WCW, just go full WCW. I mean,
sure. I mean, Sasha Banks could go to AEW, I guess. I mean, she would really help out their division. No,
they need it, but the problem is Sasha Banks really going to sit there and want to wrestle on Dark and Elevation and all those other extra matches that they've got? If Sasha Banks has the feeling that she is an important part of a division, which, you know, I've had my critiques about Sasha. I've always viewed her as the fourth of the horsewomen, the wrestling horsewomen, obviously. And, you know, none of her stuff has really wowed me over the past several years. You know, there was a time when she was very valuable, both in NXT and in the early parts of like 2016 and like the triple threat for the inaugural Women's Championship and her feud with Charlotte, you know, where she was incredibly valuable to the women's division. But if she's going into this feeling that she is head honcho, how long before she gets into a fight with Tony Khan? Because she obviously is got the balls enough to know her worth.
It depends on what they do with the other women and what their personalities are.
And let me ask you this, guy. What's going to happen when Sasha Banks is told, you're going to lose to Riho tonight by Kenny Omega? What do you think her reaction is going to be to Kenny Omega when she gets into that division and sees all the people that are getting pushed instead of Sasha Banks?
She'll probably walk out of there too.
Yeah, I think if she shows up, it won't be a long run. And then she'll be off to Hollywood.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing Mercedes Mercado in the Impact Zone.
Yeah. Impact's door is always open.
And while she may have to go to Impact or AEW or even Hollywood, if she ever shows up again, she's going to need some new music. And maybe there's an artist out there that can provide her with the music she needs.
Oh my God. If she came out to one of the songs that I'm about to tell you people, that'd be the funniest thing because I don't have anything that matches her vibe, but I could work on that. But regardless, you're probably wondering what kind of person like a boss would need music that represents being a boss. And there is nothing more boss, you fun young whippersnappers, than listening to the greatest music ever to hit modern music anywhere, anytime. The music industry is going places you've never seen and coming in underneath, secretly blind, aggressively fierce, is AB Productions CT. Because it's time. It's actually today or tomorrow is the first day of summer. So for one final day, it is springtime. And you know what that means? It means a new era in entertainment has arrived. AB Productions CT is proud to drag you out of the superficial monotony and overproduced, oversimplified modern musical mud pit with two industry-busting artists springing into action and taking the world by storm. Abizzle and White Knux deliver an avant-garde approach to music that blends elements and instruments of a wide variety of musical styles, including hip-hop, R&B, jazz, funk, rock, house, EDM, and so mucho more. It is high time for the music industry to be shaken to its core, so be a part of the foundation-breaking movement by supporting aspiring artists. And right now, you can catch the latest release, Live as One. Live with a number 3 on it instead of the letter E. I forget why, but it's what's there. It is the single from Just a Bit More, the album from White Knux, releasing on October the 14th. You've got a betrothed, you've got a loved one, or maybe you got a friend who's got a wedding coming up and you want to say, hey, this guy made this song for you and it is my expression of your love. That's what that's there for. You can catch it on Spotify and Apple Music. Anywhere you get your music, you can find it. And catch that and all of the other discography we've got, but the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you look for Abizzle, spelled Abizzle, or White Knux, spelled White space Knux, on SoundCloud, Apple Music, and Spotify for this and the entire AB Productions CT discography of over 100 songs and projects, including Retreat, Mixed Bag, Verses from a College Grad, Bear Min, Recovering, Rest Stop, The Wax Apocalypse, and many more. All just a short click away. The link is in that description. Come join the entertainment revolution with AB Production CT.
I'm sure you could come up with a song for Sasha Banks that would be about making money, being in control. Actually, it probably would be a diss track, now that I think about it.
Well, see, I do hate Ronda Rousey that much. I almost said I don't hate Ronda Rousey. That's a lie. I do. I don't hate Sasha Banks that much. But I could
you would write it from her point of view saying, fuck WWE.
Oh, that I could very easily do. I could do, you know what, I could have Sasha Banks just middle fingering all of you. It's like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, Tony Khan, fuck you, Vince, fuck you. Hey there, AAA, fuck you. And, you know, I could work with it. You know,
I don't think she's even been in AAA.
Exactly. She's just making sure that people know where she stands, and that's what you got to do.
Fuck it, I'm gonna go Hollywood.
All right. Can't wait for the buddy cop movie between The Rock and Sasha Banks. Picture it. Thank you.
Just have Sasha Banks riding on The Rock's shoulders.
Carrying
The Rock up as a police car.
That's right.
Attach some lights to his bald head.
I could see she actually just claps the one hat like the siren that they put on like the regular cars. He's just on her, like she's like piggybacked on his shoulders. She just pulls it out of like her Tyson, just wham, slaps it on his dome, starts flashing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also, I do think that she probably will end up going Hollywood. And again, she does have the Star Wars thing that's going on with her.
The Rock.
And
continue.
The Rock may be in Star Wars too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you never know. The Rock is a lot of places.
Right. And speaking of Star Wars, there's something that may be coming up soon because friends, me, Sean, and Joshua have decided that we're going to do something a little bit cool. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do videos that's not about wrestling specifically, but just about stuff that interests us on a brand new channel called the Super Jam Session.
Link in the description.
Whatever we come up with, whatever we do, whatever we think, whatever's on our minds is going to appear on that channel. It's going to be us not necessarily talking about wrestling, although it does come up. We're going to talk about stuff that interests us. And one of the next episodes is going to be talking about Star Wars. Because all of us have a love-hate relationship with that fandom.
And also have different viewpoints on which ones are the best and which ones are bad. And I'm sure it's going to break down into arguments. And that's what we're doing. And we've actually already started, folks. On the channel, there is already a video of us playing the game called AI Dungeon, which is a create your own story AI generator where you and the computer create a story, a tale to regale all of your friends and family with. It's like Mad Libs, but digitized. So it's a really fun time. I'll put the video link in the description as well because it goes places. It's a lot of fun. And so we're just expanding here between TAW Gaming, CMP, and SJS. We have got a lot going on here in the Empire. And all hail the Empire, not the First Order, but let's not talk about that. But that's the kind of stuff you're going to get on SJS. Stay tuned, folks.
Now we have 2 ads for our show. It's wonderful, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. Except who's paying us for the one where we're just jacking ourselves off?
Well, it would be like AEW, basically.
Well, you're not wrong. So which one of us is Kenny and which of the 2 of us are the Young Bucks?
Considering that Josh, again, is skinny as hell, he probably would be one Young Buck.
Yeah. And I feel like... I feel like
you would be Adam Cole.
You are so correct.
Because you're loud, obnoxious, and you like to say baby a lot.
That's right. That's right. Oh, I can't deny that. I can't deny all that. And I have made him a wonderful cuck. We don't have that in common, but you can figure out why and what's going to become of that on ACPW. Tune in next week.
We're getting all the ads.
Yeah, we're just getting done out of the way. Well, we're swerving all over the road here, Josh, again. And see, I'm calling you Josh again. Everything's going crazy. We're all off the walls. Somebody better pull us over.
I hate that transition so much.
I know you do. I'm just trying to make light here because what we're about to talk about is really just sad. It's really just sad. So I'm taking the jokes while we can make them.
Right. So let's go ahead and explain the first really big event. Like, again, had Randy Orton and Sasha Banks stuff come out on a different week, they would have been the biggest stories in wrestling.
Yeah.
But they
Not
have been
this week.
But they're being over significantly shadowed by 2 of the biggest stories in wrestling. The first one is the sad one. So let me go ahead and explain what happened, and then I'll get your reaction to it.
Let's do it.
So Monday on June 13th in Florida, around what's this county's name?
Isn't it
I really don't know
County?
how to say this county's name.
Is it Hillsborough County? Because weren't they
Valencia?
in Tampa?
Valencia County?
Oh, no, that's further north. Anyway, continue.
Point is that Jeff Hardy was pulled over by the Florida State Highway Patrol at roughly about 10 a.m. This was after about 3 or 4 different DUI call complaints about a white Dodge Charger that belonged to Jeff Hardy that was swerving around the road and driving very slowly and then speeding up and then slowly again. And Hardy was pulled over by the Florida Highway Patrol roughly around 10 a.m. And TMZ got the dash cam footage of what was going on with this traffic stop. There were guns drawn by the Highway Patrol as they were asking Jeff Hardy to get out because Jeff Hardy would stop and start. He wasn't answering their questions. And then finally, he was able to get coherent enough to open the car door and step out of the car like the police officers wanted him to. Now, Jeff Hardy at this point is basically in a stupor. He was walking around. He was incoherent. The Florida Highway Patrol officers that were there with him tried to ask him questions, and he was not giving coherent answers. When they asked him how much he had to drink, he said 2 or 3 fireballs. He said where he was driving to and where he was going. He said he was driving to North Carolina from North Carolina.
It's not funny, but it is kind of funny.
Apparently, Florida also has North Carolina in it, too.
That's right. Well, North Carolina, you drive down to Florida to get to the other side of North Carolina. Very long routed. You hate to see it. Yeah. North Carolina, surprisingly large state. Very, very much distance.
Anyways, the point is that the Highway Patrol officers decided to move him away from the freeway because they were scared that Jeff Hardy, who was trying to talk, trying to walk, and trying to be coherent, couldn't be. And they were afraid that he was going to run into traffic or something.
Yeah.
So they brought him to a parking lot. They administered a couple of different sobriety tests, and he failed them badly.
I believe it.
Eventually, they had him do the blood alcohol test, and he blew a 0.293.
They did it twice. The other one was higher. This is 10 in the morning. This is 10 a.m. What are you doing being that hammered at 10 a.m.?
Well, here's the thing that we have to remember is that Jeff Hardy was injured in that match against Darby Allin in the middle of the Owen, and then he got his bell rung by the Young Bucks in that match that happened at the pay-per-view. Now, it's been a month since then, but Jeff Hardy is clearly dealing with the side effects of it. Supposedly, he was going to go for a brain scan about his injury to his head and his concussion. And I hate to say it, but he was probably drinking in order to numb the pain.
Well, God, where do I start with this?
Now, Jeff Hardy has been arrested on 3 different counts. Let me go ahead and read the counts for you.
Please do.
There. This sucks, man.
It does suck. It really does suck. I wish we didn't have to talk about this, but we do.
So he was arrested with charge of driving with a suspended or revoked license, driving under the influence of alcohol, which is the 3rd charge he's had in the last 3 years, because he had the charge in 2018 and he had the charge in 2019.
Yep, he did.
And then violating the restrictions that were placed on his driver's license, aka not being allowed to drive by himself with alcohol in the car. And he was bailed out. And, well, let's get your reaction to this first part.
Oh. We all wanted to believe in Jeff Hardy. God, I don't even know where to start here, because, like, I'll speak to this, I guess, personally and then professionally. On a personal level, I've always really liked Jeff, you know, in the ring and as far as what he was done. You know, I met Jeff, you know, at the same time, one of those times I met Matt, I met Jeff, and he was very nice to me. You know, we got a picture and all that jazz, and, you know, it was really cool. But at the same time, if this was not somebody who was this over, would we not view Jeff as Sonny? Just without having killed somebody?
That's basically what this is that Jeff Hardy could have killed somebody. Thankfully, he didn't. But how far away were we from a Sonny-like incident?
Well, and the thing, too, it's like, Jeff has had the history with this. You know, this is not the first time that Jeff has had problems. He's had many, many, many problems. And I think what's happened of late is that his body is just not responding to the style that Jeff wants to work. As well as the irresponsibility of Tony Khan allowing a lot of these matches to happen with these guys clearly not in the shape they're in. Matt, too. You know, Matt's not had a good run of it in AEW either. Him getting pelted by Guevara, or when he got the chair to the head, or when he smacked his head on the concrete. You know, and you could tell these guys wanted to be the Hardys of old, and they're just old Hardys.
They can't do the things that they used to be able to do, and it sucks because, again, Father Time is undefeated.
Yep, and it's true, you know. And again, I just feel like I wanted to believe that Jeff really had turned things around. I mean, obviously we had the past drug test that WWE still released him over because they didn't want to look like they had egg on their face, and that very much realistically happened. You know, who knows what happened during that match with Jeff, because he was still acting very strangely. But at the same time, you know why WWE felt that way about him, you know, and told him, you know, this is probably something related to all of the demons you've had before, so go to rehab, even though that time it was the boy who cried wolf.
Well, it's not necessarily even just boy cry wolf, but again, WWE, as much as it sucks, we're justified in asking, hey, listen, we don't know if you are on something or not, but just as a precaution, we want you to go to rehab.
Yeah. And little did we know that once Jeff was out of WWE's grasp, that we were going to end up with this.
Yeah, but I think there was also like a warning point. It's just like, this should have been a wake-up call. Maybe not even necessarily to Jeff, but to us as fans. Like, if WWE doesn't want to work with you, yeah, that's a problem. but it's also like they usually don't do it unless they have a reason or they think they have a reason.
Yeah, and that's kind of the tough situation here, because like nobody claimed at the time that Jeff Hardy wasn't somebody who was worthy of accusing of such shenanigans. We all have seen the tape from 11 years ago.
We all seen the tape from 11 years ago. We know about the arrest in 18 and the arrest in 19. It's not like this isn't recent.
And it's not like this has been different in the past decade. But we still all wanted to hope for Jeff because we all love Jeff. You know, Sunny definitely made a lot of enemies, so it was a little different when she fell off. But we all wanted to believe that Jeff could change his ways. And at this point, on a personal level, it's just of my opinion, so take it for what it's worth, but it's of my opinion that until Jeff truly wants to change, he will not change. It doesn't matter how many times he goes to rehab to quit. Unfortunately, rehab does not work for everybody, and a lot of people don't succeed because you're not getting to the core problem. And until somebody can do that, a la someone like perhaps Diamond Dallas Page, who we've talked about in recent weeks, and what he's been able to do for people who've been in this exact situation.
Well, here, may I for a second?
Please.
I don't know if a lot of people actually know this about me and knows about my history, but I work in the criminal justice system. I'm not going to say how because I would like to keep my anonymity. Is that fair?
No, tell people everything.
Tell them all my secrets.
Reveal your secrets, young person.
Padawan.
That's right.
Again, we're going to the Star Wars thing next week or something. Anyway,
This is the news and plug show.
This is the news and plug show. Point, though, is that, again, I have worked in criminal justice, and I've worked with guys who are suffering from addiction, whether it be drugs, gambling, or just personality changes.
Yeah.
And there's always one constant rule in my line of work that comes down to it. You can't help someone that doesn't want to be helped.
Yeah. It's the truth. That is the absolute truth. You know, I lost an uncle. You know, without getting too personal here, I lost an uncle to alcoholism. And it's not for lack of trying on his part, for the kind of, but because he didn't really want it at the time, but it wasn't for lack of trying for the rest of the family's part. We all tried, but it ended up killing him as a result. So I know firsthand the kind of vices that addiction and namely alcohol can be, but at the same time, there's a point where you can't change what they don't want to change. And until they want to change, you cannot do a damn thing about it. And sadly, Jeff's got to want it. And I don't know what his motivations are. I don't know whether it's going to take jail time to get that awakening. I don't know if it's going to take Dallas reaching out or if Jeff's going to ever feel that way. I don't know. But that's the personal side of this.
Right. Now we have to speak to the professional side of it.
Yeah.
The professional side is that AEW has suspended Jeff Hardy, and Tony Khan put out a statement saying that Jeff Hardy will not be returned until the successful completion of rehab, which he and AEW will be helping in the process of.
But he's being suspended without pay, but I almost guarantee you that AEW is paying for the rehab, so it's like, know.
Again, Jeff Hardy is not a broke man.
That we know
supposedly.
of. That we know
of. But we assume that he has money, because again, it's Jeff Hardy. I'm sure he has
I would
money.
imagine so.
And even if he doesn't have money, we know Matt does, so.
Yeah, but Matt also has 4 kids, so you got to factor that in. So who knows how rich Matt really is at this point.
But we've seen their mansion.
Yeah.
Well, thanks to the broken stuff we've seen.
The Hardy compound.
So, yeah, which is a legitimate thing. They actually do own all that, so.
By the way, I'm not dying, folks. The allergies in Connecticut are really brutal today. Continue.
Yeah. Anyways, the point, though, is that Jeff Hardy So let's say he does the rehab, right?
Yep.
Do you bring him back?
Well, do I bring him back or does Tony Khan bring him back?
Well, let's ask from our perspective.
Okay.
If you are Tony Khan, let's say you're Tony Khan and you suddenly have a brain, do you bring him back?
Well, here's the thing. I personally would have done this a little bit differently. That's just this is of my opinion. My opinion is with Jeff, especially with Matt, and this is tying in professionally, by the way. Matt and Jeff, you and I both said it in the past several weeks. They can't go anymore. We genuinely, just for their health, want them to retire. And this just further proved that point, I think, this whole thing with Jeff. And I personally would have probably not suspended him. I probably would have, quote unquote, sent him home. And been like, look, I obviously can't condone this, but I don't want to just like cut ties with you and leave you hanging, so I will buy out the rest of your contract. I'm not severing ties, you'll still be employed for the time that you're here, but you're not going to be on TV. Go home, spend time with your wife, spend time figuring things out. And if you want to go to rehab, that's your call. But at this point, I personally view Jeff as unhireable. Nobody would be able to rely on Jeff Hardy at this point. Unless you're a real mark indie promotion willing to pay a stupid amount for Jeff to appear, which I just don't think would happen at this point with this kind of track record. So I would have sent Jeff home and just let him get paid at home, and he can decide what he wants to do with his life. If he decides not to change, with a clause somewhere saying if you go out and you fuck up again, then we have every right to cut the tie wherever the pay and the tie wherever that time may be. Use this opportunity to go and get yourself better. Use this time to figure out what's going on with you. And if you come back, if you can prove that you are reliable, maybe we'll put you in a more favorable position that more caters to what your weaknesses are, as opposed to exploiting the fact that you're the Hardys and not telling you that you really need to change your style. So I wouldn't have even sent this statement out in the first place. I would have just sent Jeff home, and just on the sly taken care of him. What would you have done?
Well, because the problem is that you have to take some sort of action, because if you don't, it sets a dangerous precedent that anybody can get away with this.
Given from the company that brought Nick Gage in, but let's not get into semantics.
Let's not get into semantics, but again, you're setting the precedent that anybody who has drug issues will need to go. Now, there's another thing too. There's another wrestler that was on AEW's roster that just got released because of domestic violence. I don't remember the name.
Me either.
But that also brings up another point. So Jeff Hardy, because he has a name in wrestling, is able to get it's different circumstances, but is it really though? Because domestic violence and DUI, again, we said it before and we'll say it again, Sunny incident was just waiting to happen with Jeff Hardy.
Well, that's the only distinction there, is that nobody was hurt, as opposed to domestic violence and Sunny crashing into somebody where somebody was hurt and or killed. So that's really the discrepancy there. But your point stands.
Right, because Jeff Hardy is a star and a name, and I hate to say this because I really hate to say it, but he is marketable and can make money for AEW. They feel that they have to basically put kid gloves on and like, we'll send you to rehab, we'll have you do the right thing, we'll say because here is the ultimate problem of all of this. Let's say Jeff Hardy cleans his act up. Let's say he goes to rehab, he's completely successful. Do you bring him back to wrestle?
Personally, I don't think it would benefit Jeff to be put back in the environment that caused him to slip up in the first place. So no.
And that's the point, is that what is the ultimate goal? If we fire Jeff Hardy, if we send him home, if we rehab him, when he gets out of it, do you bring him back to wrestle? If I'm a promoter, no. Now, I'll be happy to have Jeff Hardy come in and do like autograph signings and promotional deals and maybe even toys or video games or stuff like that, but not to wrestle.
I'd rather have Jeff come back and manage one of these young upstart, I'm trying to be cool, but I'm not tag teams. Because Jeff Hardy being there, he doesn't even have to talk that much. But just him being around one of these guys would definitely help with the Jeff Hardy endorsement. One of these death defiers that has these ridiculous matches that were inspired by Jeff in the first place. So you get him behind one of these people, and then you get to a point where Jeff has no choice but to come back. My body's broken. My body has been beaten. I've beaten myself up more than I've beaten up my opponents, and I've beaten many of my opponents and won more championships than most of the people here, and you stupid son of a bitch, you've prompted me for the last time. You've beaten my tag team. Now I have no choice to come back and wrestle. And he wrestles like a very limited match in like a 6-man tag where he gets to hit a couple highlights, and then that's it. You know, you could do that with Jeff, but can you bring him back full-time to wrestle? No. Can you bring him back in any sort of major position and have him wrestle? No. You know, you'd have to basically give him the Brock Lesnar treatment.
You can't take the risk of Jeff Hardy getting in a prominent position, winning the tag team titles or winning the world title, and getting another DUI.
Well, and here's the question to you, Sky. Let's say, for all intents and purposes, that Tony and Jeff part ways. Is Jeff employable by anyone anymore?
No.
No.
And if you are doing it, you're bringing him in, you are only doing an autograph signing, or maybe he's managing, although Jeff Hardy is not a manager type. I can already tell you that.
Well, it depends on how invested in it Jeff is. You know, if Jeff tried, you never know. I mean, obviously, there have been people who have been crappy wrestlers who turned out to be great managers, and vice versa. You know,
give me the last one.
It's just, I don't know. I don't know with Jeff. I think at this point, I don't think, you said he was marketable. I don't think that with the way that Tony's presented him already, that he really is anymore. I think people don't really want to see it because, like you and I have said, it's just sad. Of course people don't want to say it. We don't want to say that our heroes that we grew up watching, that we idolized, can't do what they used to do anymore. Yeah.
It's sad when we see it in sports. It's sad when we see it in wrestling. But the truth has to hit some point.
Yeah, and this kind of reminds me, especially of late, of Goldberg versus The Undertaker. Where that match was very significant in a way of really representing that. I mean, Goldberg was Goldberg, so let's not get into that. But with Undertaker, that at this point the magic had run out, and he who could get magic matches out of anybody except for Giant Gonzalez. He could get matches out of anybody, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't go there anymore. And this is how it felt with Matt and Jeff these past few months that they've been the Hardys again.
Years.
Yeah. Years. You know, there's a reason that I had Wrestling's Finest retire the Hardys. Watch ACPW season 2.
Because limited shelf life. You have a very limited amount of time with certain guys before the bloom is off the rose, and you had to do it.
And I feel like now that timeline has shrunk to a third of its size. Because at this point, Matt is not going to be anything more. He's got nothing more to contribute. I love Matt dearly, but he's got nothing more to contribute to pro wrestling. Let's be real. At this point, Matt Hardy, unless he goes away for like 5 years and pops up, there's nothing more for Matt in wrestling. And with Jeff,
at that point, Matt Hardy will be 50.
Yeah, and with Jeff, there's no reliability on it. It's tainted goods. It's in the same category as Scott Hall and Jake Roberts and a countless number of other wrestlers. Tommy Rich. There are countless other people who have been fallen victim to this whole thing. I hate to bring up China, but
But China.
But China, so folks, addiction is a very real thing, and it's something that we have to take seriously, and I really hope that Jeff does get help, but more than that, I hope Jeff is able to help himself.
Right. Eventually, we want Jeff Hardy to be okay. And please, we love you. We respect you. Retire.
But go home, Jeff. Go home, Jeff. You're drunk. I'm sorry. Well, that broke the tension.
Daddy wouldn't like it if you did that.
That's right. That's what Daddy wouldn't like. Oh, man. And Grandpa certainly wouldn't like it, but Grandpa might like somebody else.
Oh.
How do you like that transition?
What the fuck is with you and your transitions today?
Ladies and gentlemen, it is our main event of the evening. And boy, is it a doozy.
To a 15-minute time limit.
It's a big doozy. Oh, well, I don't know if we could limit ourselves to talking about this for 15 minutes. We're pretty long-winded as it is.
We'll do a 30-minute time limit, just to be fair.
There we go. Timer starts now. Ready and go.
Alrighty. So, again, the Jeff Hardy situation would have been the story of the week of professional wrestling, and then Wednesday rolled around.
Yeah.
So, on Wednesday, the Wall Street Journal released a report that WWE Board had been looking into a hush pact of CEO Vincent Kennedy McMahon. So, let me give you the details of the story from the Wall Street Journal's thing.
All right.
So, supposedly, in 2019, Vincent Kennedy McMahon hired a paralegal. Now, this paralegal was, I want to say 41 at the time. Old as Vince now. He is 76, so he would have been 72, basically.
Yeah.
72, 73.
73.
Point is that there's a 30-year gap, and supposedly there was a consensual sexual relationship between the two. That started in 2019.
That old wrinkled huffer duffer. Ugh.
Yep.
Ugh.
Now, supposedly, the paralegal was getting preferential treatment as a result of this consensual relationship. In her first year of work for WWE, she was being paid $100,000 a year.
Yep.
By the next year, her salary had doubled to $200,000 a year.
That's not sketchy.
Not sketchy at all. Supposedly, this relationship lasted for 2 years, and then Vincent Kennedy McMahon, and this is the gross part, supposedly passed her on to John Laurinaitis' division. John Laurinaitis, of course, is the head of talent relations for WWE. And in 2001, was passed around, quote, like a toy, unquote, to John Laurinaitis in 2021. And she was under John Laurinaitis for roughly 6 to 8 months at that time.
Literally.
Now, literally. Now, supposedly, this female employee in January of this year, 2022, was gone from WWE, and she received a non-disclosure agreement about the relationship she had with Vincent Kennedy McMahon and John Laurinaitis for $3 million.
Damn!
So she was paid $3 million to not talk about her relationship with Vince and with John Laurinaitis. However, the story broke because a friend of hers reportedly told the WWE board about it, and this now is getting the WWE board of directors investigating into Vince McMahon's reactions. Now, this has also led to some other details coming up, but let me get your impressions of the first part of the story.
All right, well, let's put a big old asterisk around this entire bracket and say, allegedly. This is all, we don't know everything, we don't know a ton. This is just some details that we've picked up based on what news has broken, but it has made national news. I mean, everybody's been looking into this. It's funny because this whole thing about her being a paralegal reminds me of that episode of How I Met Your Mother, where I believe it's Barney hooks Ted up with a paralegal, but tells Ted that she's a hooker. So she's like, and that paralegal is slang for the term hooker. So there's this great scene where they're sitting at the table and she, Ted's trying to like get it out of her that like she's a hooker. And he's like, you ready to go? And she's like, I'm a paralegal. And he's like, no, you're a hooker. She's like, I'm a paralegal. He's like, no, you're a hooker. And then she looks at him and he looks at her and he goes, you're a paralegal. So this whole thing with the paralegal, and how many times can I say paralegal in the course of paralegaling your paralegal? Anyway, I'm suspect about how this all went down. Because John Laurinaitis was not in WWE until March of 2021 when he got rehired?
Yes, and supposedly what happened is that when he was rehired, he was given a division, and Vince McMahon put the paralegal in that division.
Yeah, and part of this is like, okay, how much of this did she, I don't know if this is necessarily like harassment. It feels like it's misconduct, but the real issue here is using company money to do this, whether it's the salary raise or the $3 million, which Vince has claimed came out of his own personal money, which he did not deny the relationship. He did not deny anything, really. He just said that it was his money. And that's really the only thing that he said as a part of this whole thing so far.
Well, here's the thing, is that, do you want to hear the famous words of Jerry McDivitt?
I love, let's hear me some Jerry McDivitt.
So, when the story came out, Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis did not respond to the comments. But Jerry McDivitt wrote to the Wall Street Journal and supposedly told the Wall Street Journal that, quote, WWE did not pay any monies to her on her departure.
Interesting.
So Jerry McDivitt, on behalf of Vince McMahon, is denying that there was a settlement.
Okay. And right now, again, like we said, this is all alleged. And I also want to just preface this by saying that no matter what the outcome is, one way or the other, I'm not saying that she's lying. I'm not saying any of that. I'm not saying that Vince is telling the truth, and I'm not saying that Vince is lying. We don't know, right? No matter what the situation is, we want the truth, and we want justice to be served as a result of that truth, no matter what the outcome is.
Having said that,
well, this gets more interesting.
Having said that, the reason why this has become bigger is because that the WWE board has been investigating into this. Now, the board is excluding some very, very key people. Obviously, Vince.
Yeah.
And Stephanie and Triple H and Nick Khan, but the other members of the board. And supposedly what's been happening is that they have hired their own legal firm to investigate this case. And what they found is that there may be other instances of NDAs with female employees that have left WWE that may or may not have had sexual relationships with Vince McMahon.
Now that's really the key to this. The major key, DJ Khaled. But the major key to this is because if this ends up being true, and Vince has got a laundry list of NDAs, that's where they're going to get him. I don't think they've got enough on this initial story to pin it on Vince. But some of the other ones and some of the, they really start trying to dig into Vince's past, they're going to uncover a lot of skeletons in that fucking closet.
Which, reportedly, the number of NDAs is somewhere between the teens. And this is what I've heard. This is not me saying it officially.
Hearsay.
Again, allegedly. Supposedly, it goes from the teens to the 20s to possibly the 30s and the 40s.
I mean, I don't know. This is very strange. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised, but again, this is one interesting thing, though, because it's not like any of these women have come forward about this. This is all just a leak from a friend of one. So what will really make this interesting is if we start to have some of these women come forward and be like, yes, I was a part of this. Yes, this is how much money I received. Because I think it's going to be really hard to uncover a lot about Vince. He's been so incredibly crafty with that. It's going to be hard to uncover unless they can come up with a concrete paper trail. And having some of these women come forward, which we might see in the next few weeks. This is a very young, fledgling story, a developing story. And it's not even the most major part of this. We haven't even gotten to the shocker of this whole situation. But just as it stands right now, it's too early to tell what direction this is going to head. This is all allegations. The fact that they're doing an investigation is pretty fascinating. And we'll see what the role of John Laurinaitis is in this whole deal. Because John's got more of a track record and ideology of doing something like this than Vince does, I think.
Yeah, like, this investigation is not just into Vince McMahon. It's also into his inner circle of friends who may or may not have known something. The obvious people are John Laurinaitis, Kevin Dunn. I can't remember.
Probably most of the McMahons.
Who is that guy who's really sucked Vince's dick over the last 20 years?
Bruce Pritchard.
Bruce Pritchard.
Yes. Yeah. No, I would bet you that there's probably more people who know about this than not. That's really the fascinating thing about this. I think that when it comes to the major players in WWE, I feel like this has been something, if this is true, and this number's in the 20s and 30s, then there have been a lot of people who have known about this situation.
Right. And by the way, this is not Vince McMahon's only thing that's happening. Vince McMahon is also being sued by former XFL commissioner Oliver Luck.
Yeah, that's finally starting now. They had to wait a while, but this was announced like in 2020. But now this is coming up at the same time.
Yep, because they tried to settle with the court, and Oliver Luck said, no, we are not settling. So Vince McMahon is going to court against Oliver Luck, and that's a very bad person to go to court against.
Well, especially because of how it all went down and how COVID was used as an excuse to basically lay off several hundred people.
Including Oliver Luck in the XFL.
Yeah.
And the ending of the XFL.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, is every single person in the XFL who got laid off by it just no longer being a thing. I think that that's going to be a really fascinating, that's going to be more interesting, I think, than these sexual allegations, because that one, I think, has got major ramifications for WWE stock value and their and just their overall price in general, because the settlement out of, if Oliver Luck wins, it's not Vince just paying Oliver Luck. He's paying a lot of fucking people.
Well, I'm actually very glad that you mentioned the stock prices, because supposedly, now here's the thing, is that WWE stock has tumbled a bit. It was trading at a high of $68.50 Wednesday, June 15th at 1 p.m. But of course, the story came out the day after, and the day after, the stock drove down and went down to a low of $62.
Well, $6 isn't that bad. That's not a tank. That's not a complete plummet.
But when you own millions upon millions of the stock, then it's a problem. Now, supposedly, there is some reports that the WWE stock was traded 22.1 million times, about 600,000 times more than the 1.5 average for the stock market for that type of stock.
And the rumor was that it was Kevin Dunn inside trading, which they said would have been illegal if he was on the board, but he wasn't on the board, so it's technically not illegal. But I don't necessarily believe that, because the rumors and the whispers of insider trading with the McMahons and the inner circle of the McMahons has not been a new development. Not really.
Right. Well, if he's getting information from the board, then it would be illegal insider trading for Kevin Dunn.
Yeah. Who knows? It's going to be interesting. There's a lot of developments that are going to happen. This is monumental for WWE and its identity. It's, and the mark on its face that it could get after this, no pun intended, but this could be really, really bad for the future of WWE.
Well, speaking of, may I go ahead and get into some more information for you?
Please do.
So this was apparently the information that was reported to Dave Meltzer about the situation. So Dave Meltzer has spoken to a lot of people who are in the know of big business and the stock market, and they believe that Vince McMahon will not survive as CEO of WWE. And this eventually can happen because he stepped down from the board.
Which he had to do. There was no way around this. Now, I personally viewed this something of as an admission of guilt initially, but then when I thought about it, I'm like, how is he supposed to run the day-to-day operations of a company that it's investigating him?
Well, we also have to remember that Vince McMahon is stepping down of the business side. He is still in charge of creative, supposedly.
For now.
But again, this is the whole thing, is that WWE, is this really a power change? Now, let's wait for that for a second. Meltzer reports that the WWE talent didn't know anything at all about the allegations. This hit them all at the same time, and they're asking all the same questions that we are.
Sure.
Now, supposedly, there's a possibility that someone who was on the board of directors leaked the story to the Wall Street Journal.
Interesting.
Because apparently, this investigation has been going on for several months. This hasn't been going on up until now. It's been investigated since the incident happened in January.
Oh, sure. Yeah, obviously, but somebody eventually wanted to make this national news.
Which, because of Vince McMahon stepping down, the person taking his place as the current chairperson of the board is Stephanie McMahon.
Which they say is interim, but I'm not so sure about that.
But here's the thing. Stephanie McMahon, a couple of months ago, did her own temporary leave of absence. And during that time, supposedly there were people who were in Vince McMahon's inner circle that didn't like Stephanie McMahon, particularly Kevin Dunn.
Well, because Kevin Dunn hates everything that WWE does. That's why he's in the position he is.
Well, more so, he didn't like that Stephanie was going away because he felt like it was a betrayal to Vince. Because, again, Kevin Dunn is a lapdog for Vince.
Yeah, God forbid you have a family and a husband who nearly freaking died that you want to be with.
But now there are questions about whether or not Stephanie McMahon knew about it. And because she's a member of the board, she probably would have known about the investigation. And that her taking a leave of absence was a planned move.
Well, it definitely could have been a setup to distance herself from Vince, and then when Vince got caught, Stephanie takes over. However, if Stephanie knew about this going on, think about how long Stephanie McMahon has been in the WWE. Do you think that Stephanie just wouldn't know about all of her father's affairs, allegedly? And what happens if we go through this whole thing and this ends up being more of like a Jerry Sandusky thing? Where it becomes, look him up, kids, where it becomes who knew, or the Joe Pa thing, right? And who knew about what, when, and where? Does Stephanie McMahon get exiled if it finds out that she's got a little brown on her fingertips?
Especially because we have to remember that of all the McMahon family members besides Vince, she's the only one that has been there the entire time. So
yeah.
We know that they're going to ask her questions.
Yep. And so there's a lot here, folks. It's a lot to unpack, but it almost feels like we've seen, it's like the portal opened after all of these years and Satan has come back for Vince's soul.
Well, here's the thing. He's not only going for Vince's soul, because there's more. Shall I give you more?
Oh, please.
An anonymous female WWE talent supposedly sent Fightful Select a message about Laurinaitis. Quote, "I'd rather get all my shit sent to me in a trash bag when I get fired than have to deal with him. And neither are good options."
I mean, here's the thing. I think that Laurinaitis is going to get slammed here. I don't think there's, and here's the thing. And I didn't realize this until I had heard this from the cult leader himself, Mr. Cornette. Apparently, while this was going on, his wife, mother of the Bella twins, had brain cancer. If this is true. If you want to really put the stain on somebody's image, there's a nice one for you, Johnny Ace.
Right. Like, we can debate about Vince McMahon's future. We can almost certainly assume that John Laurinaitis is going to be gone from WWE.
Well, I'm not so sure that it's just going to be gone from WWE. I think that there might be some longer-term ramifications there. If this ends up being true and there ends up being, like, consequential evidence, and women start coming forward and we get documents and we get, there's a lot here that could ruin a lot of people, on top of Vince losing a lot of money to Oliver Luck if they end up winning their case, which I think they definitely have a case for, given the way that it all went down. It's
now here's the thing. Do you want to know how Vince McMahon responds to all of this besides stepping down?
I'm gonna appear on SmackDown.
And did you see the opening of SmackDown?
Oh God, it was like, why are you out here? What was the point of that?
The point was just to pop a rating and get as many people as eyeballs on SmackDown as he could.
Yeah, and then he said nothing.
He said, then, now, forever, just like the signature. Welcome to Friday Night SmackDown.
Yeah.
And the worst part is that the fans cheered him.
Yeah, and they said, well, he said, then, now, forever, together. And I think that was kind of the message of, like, Vince is like, we're going to get through this, all as a family. Because we're all a family, right? Right? And I don't know, man. This is monstrous. I mean, no matter what the outcome is here, the face of WWE is going to change forever. We'd all been wondering how it was going to happen, when it was going to happen, what circumstances were going to be in. I did not have 30 years of sexual NDAs on my Vince McMahon leaving bingo card.
But the sad part is that could have been on the bingo card.
Yeah. Well, but then you start thinking about all of the weird, perverse things that Vince McMahon has foisted onto his television. Between Trish Stratus walking like a dog and the incest angle that we, thank God, never got to see.
Hot lesbian action.
HLA.
Sable.
Yep. Anything in the Attitude Era. I mean, anything in the women with the women in the Attitude Era.
I'm sure it was Jerry the King Lawler's idea to do the bikini contest, but Vince McMahon had to be the one to approve it. Yep.
Yeah, and, not for nothing, flavor of the time, and they're very beautiful women. I'm not knocking the bikini contest. Of all the things that they did, I did not hate the bikini contest, especially because they turned it into an angle most of the time. So, I'm not going to knock them for that one. But as for the rest, you could kind of, you wouldn't expect this of Vince until you start following the breadcrumbs.
Right, and then you realize that he's just like any other guy.
Well,
it's just that.
Well, no, he's not. He's not like any other guy. He's a genetic jackhammer, and apparently he certainly has great fruits of steel, but they're withery and they don't have much juice left in them.
But you never know when he has those great balls of fire.
Yeah, and not just on pay-per-view. I don't know what to make of this still. I mean, this is so early. Now, again, I don't mean to be repetitive, but this is all very Raw. Monday Night Raw.
We're just doing terrible puns back and forth.
Yeah, this is what it's got. Well, this is what we've got to do, because this is something where we're going to basically, I assume, Sky, that you and I are going to be reporting on this for the next probably year. At least, this is going to be something that is going to rock the wrestling world to its core, and land the SmackDown with the people's elbow probably on top of that.
It really depends on what information comes out and how quickly it comes out. But you're right. This may be finally the thing that forces Vince McMahon to get away from WWE.
Yeah,
and it's surprising, but it's not surprising at the same time, and that's the saddest part of this whole thing.
Well, I think the other thing that's sad about this is that I wish he was stepping down from the creative part and keeping the business part more than I wish he was getting rid of the business part and keeping the creative part. Because that's what really needs to change is the creative part. But at this point, I think we're on borrowed time. The clock is ticking. The clock is ticking on Vince McMahon, and that hourglass just got turned over, and now we're seeing the sand start to drop. It won't be long now, Sky.
I mean, yeah, but we know that Vince McMahon has gotten his way out of situations like this before. So I'm not saying nothing until it actually happens.
See, that's the fascinating thing. Because at the same time, as damning as this looks, this is Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon has let wrestlers get away with murder. More than once. Vince McMahon has basically gone to trial for steroids, even though it was the one time that he probably didn't do it, and beat the U.S. government without calling a single witness. Vince McMahon has defied legal victory in ways that you cannot imagine. And we probably still don't even know. When Vince finally goes, there's going to have to be a 2-hour-long documentary about all the shit that he did. Without a doubt.
Forget 2-hour documentary. You could do an entire season of Dark Side of the Ring, which supposedly may be coming back. Stay tuned for that, folks.
That's right. Netflix. Yeah, you can make a Netflix seasonal series out of it. It's just, it's amazing. This is amazing what's transpiring here. But here's the funniest part of this. And it's in a shocking turn of events, even though it's Stephanie McMahon, ultimately, Vince, in the turn where prior to Vince nearly going to jail for steroids, he had Jerry Jarrett lined up to take over WWE. And now, in 2022, Vince McMahon hires Jeff Jarrett to run executive power in WWE, and Vince might go to jail.
Wrestling is a flat circle.
It comes full. Wrestling is a flat circle. Suck on that, AJ Styles. But it comes full circle. And it's fascinating. You get this said a lot in pro wrestling of this is a great time to be a fan of pro wrestling, but truly this is a great time to be a fan of pro wrestling. This is going to get juicy, it's going to get ugly, and it's going to go places that I don't think any of us are prepared for.
And we're going to be there along the way, talking about whatever comes up. And you can follow along if you like, share, and subscribe to the Court-Martail podcast.
That's right. And that's the only way you're going to know. You hit that bell button. And that bell button goes bing every time when you switch it to all. When we post, you know. And Skylar, you'll be happy to know I actually set a timer for half an hour, and we only stopped at 26:30 talking about Vince McMahon. So I'm proud of us.
Great. We still had 3 minutes of TV time, though. Damn it.
That's right. Well, that's okay because thankfully we can go to a commercial break anytime we want. Next week, ACPW, NWL, you're going to get the hottest professional wrestling booking in the entire world of pro wrestling on YouTube, on television, anywhere, any place, right here on the interwebs, right here at the Court-Martail podcast. Then 2 weeks from now, Money in the Bank 2013 review. Skylar's going to lead us all the way through it because it was his choice. So there's a lot going on in CMP. Stay tuned for Super Jam Session posts. Feel free to subscribe to that. Josh Ageddon's channel himself, TAW Gaming. That's going to be posted. So much going on in our little universe we've got in the YouTube world. But for the Court-Martail podcast, it's time to take our first commercial break. Skylar, thank you for this incredibly exhilarating episode. And we just have to sit tight, buckle up, and stay tuned.
Yep. Now I'm going to go ahead and get myself a Fireball and call an Uber because that's the responsible thing, Jeff Hardy.
That's right. Or, even better, just don't drink Fireball. But that's a story for another time, folks. Before that, those great balls of fire hit our face. We will be right back.